The art of tail pulling. I think the first thing that is very important to say about it is making sure that you are safe. I know this horse, I've had him for 2 years now, and I trust him, but that doesn't mean that the day isn't going to come where he's going to maybe just lift a leg and tell me he's had enough. So you need to concentrate on what they're telling you as you pull their tail. The object of tail pulling is to enhance the shape of their bottom. This horse's tail is already pulled, but it needs a tidy up. So because I know the shape that I want, which should be narrow, coming into a slight waist and then flaring out, you just comb it to the side, take the light mane pulling and pull the long hairs. As you can see, I'm not taking very much. He's lifting his tail, which is, yes, a sign that he's not totally happy about it, but he's certainly not objecting. I'm not having to restrain him or get him restrained in any way. When I first start pulling a horse's tail, when it first arrives, I quite often will do it over a stable door, or while I'm grooming them, just pull out 1 or 2 hairs and see how they react. This will give you a very good indication of whether they're going to object or not. I've always pulled tails, and I've never yet found a horse that I can't. It takes a bit of time and a bit of patience, and you don't want to be taking the whole lot out in one hit, because also if you do that, you then end up with a lavatory brush look in about 6 weeks' time. So I start normally in January when the horses come back in to work, having had their winter break, and just take a bit out then, comb it down, have another look, have a tweak, another little tweak. As you can see, I've got a very fine tooth comb. I think it's a dog grooming comb, and I find this brilliant. I don't actually pull the hair out with that. I actually have to use my fingers. The other thing that can make it much easier is fine surgical gloves. Because they're rubber, it sticks well. So a bit from one side and a bit from the other, and just slowly work your way through. I then tidy up by hand, again, but without using the comb. And if I get any hairs that are too short, I have the all-important pair of Diddy pliers, which are a little bit like industrial-size eyebrow pluckers. And I can just take the little short ones out, and it pulls 2 or 3 at a time. I think the most important thing with tail pulling is not to try and pull great handfuls out. If somebody pulls out 2 or 3 hairs from your head, you're probably not going to object too much. They grab a handful, and you're going to squeak. Or in this case, if it's a horse, you grab too much, that's when you're likely to get yourself kicked. I think the other thing is, as I say, don't do it all in one hit. A little bit at a time. It's not a job that you can do quickly. Keep stepping back, having another look. It's better to take too little than too much, because once you've taken it out, you can't put it back in. It's a little bit like cutting the bottom off a horse's tail. Once you've cut it off, it takes a very long time for it to grow back. Also, we like to keep plenty of thickness in the bottom of their tails. I use one of the silicone products that you spray in the tail, and they're done nearly all the time. Even in the winter when they're roughed off, I'm inclined to keep them well sprayed so that they don't take too much tail out. And then we also use hair brushes to brush their tails out so that we don't take too much hair out. Basically, if their tails haven't only got 1 or 2 shavings in, we just pick the shavings out. We don't just brush them for brushing's sake, because basically, to grow a piece of tail that long probably takes almost as long as their lifetime. So I don't want to be wasting it. When you've got your horse's tail to a shape you like, having pulled it, you'll quite often find that in the depth of the tail, where you've pulled some of the hairs out, there's just a tiny spot of blood. I always, when I finish tail washing, either wipe through it with a damp cloth, or if I've had a major wash, I wash the tail so that they're not sore, because if they're sore or it gets scabby and it's slightly irritant, they'll then rub it, and then you've got twice as much hair taken out of the tail, and always in a place you don't want. So there we go. Hopefully we've produced a nice shape there, just sculpted slightly, and that with the tail damp down, with the tail, don't do that, Mookie! That with the tail bandage on will hopefully look quite smart. And I've pulled probably there's the bottom of his dock, so I've pulled about 2/3 of the way down. It's one of those things you can just keep taking another hair and another hair. But eventually the day will come when I think I've probably pulled a perfect tail, but probably not today. And to finish off, we always put a tail bandage on, damp the tail down, and tie it up. Never too tight. Slightly too loose is always better than too tight. You can give your horse all sorts of problems. And also you'll find they won't want to have a tail bandage put on if it's too tight or too uncomfortable. That will probably stay on for about 20 minutes maximum. Quite often when we're grooming, we put a tail bandage on before we start brushing the horses, so they can just stand for 20 minutes. It just encourages the hair to lie smooth and flat.